So I recently came across this Instagram reel of a mama just really sharing her struggles on balancing it all between homemaking and homeschooling, taking care of her children, wanting to spend quality time with them, but also wanting to cook and wanting to spend time with her husband. And you can have all these incredible priorities, but it can also be one of the most challenging things to balance it all, and every day is going to be different when it comes to balancing it. The reason why I wanted to share this particular thing to start off the video is I wanted to highlight the comment that a very seasoned mama left on this young mama's reel when she was talking about just being overwhelmed and living in overwhelm. This seasoned mama simply said, "You are doing a wonderful job because you are raising children, not houses." And so that's what we're kind of going to be talking about today. I honestly don't even remember where I came across this reel. I really wish I could. I really wish I would have screenshot this seasoned mama's comment because it really opened my eyes to a different way of thinking, because all she really said was, yes, you are raising your children, not your house. And sometimes we can get them mixed up, we can get them confused, and we can swap priorities when it should really be the other way around. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I've been wanting to talk about this whole idea, or this whole really my personal struggle of balancing it all for quite a while. And I honestly never really know how to talk about it, even though I know all mamas across the board struggle with this one thing of balancing it all. So we're going to talk about that today. But yeah, with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into today's video. So when it comes to balancing it all, whatever that all might look like for you, everybody's going to have different priorities. In a little bit, I'm actually going to be turning the camera around, and then we are together going to be kind of writing down our priorities, our secondary priorities, and things like that to kind of help us wrap our minds around what is the things that we need to balance first and foremost, and then things like that will flow from that, if that makes sense. But when it comes to balancing it all, it can be really hard, and I love the day and age in which we live. I actually do love enjoying some of the modern technology as far as social media, connecting with all the wonderful mamas that otherwise I would not have gotten the chance to know. Honestly, the community that I have found online has been absolutely beautiful, and I really cherish the connections and friendships that I have made through this platform and Instagram and things like that. I just am very appreciative of that as far as finding like-minded people and like-minded mamas that I can either share with, and then vice versa. But one of the huge misconceptions, especially here on YouTube, and I'm going to be go ahead and transparent in saying that a lot of us might seem, and I can talk about a whole bunch of other YouTube mamas as well, it might seem like we have everything all together and that everything's flowing well, but it's absolutely 100% not the case. It is not the case, and I think the whole struggle of balancing it all is honestly one of my personal biggest struggles. And I honestly wanted to have my husband on here for this video as well, because he would be able to back me up on that a little bit, as far as saying this is something that I have always struggled with, because I have all of these priorities. I have like my top 5 priorities, which we'll get into later in the video, and I want to hold them all at equal value and equal importance. But when I start to enter into that state of overwhelm, it's when I want to do all of them at the same time of equal importance. That's every day. It just doesn't work that way. Like, you kind of have to pick what your priority is by the day, and then everything else might just have to go by the wayside, and vice versa, depending on what that priority is of the day and everything like that. So it is never really about, for me anyway, personally, about balancing it all. I don't think anything can actually really be balanced, and that's what we're kind of going to be getting into later in the video. But I'm going to go ahead and grab the camera. I'm going to turn it around a little bit and kind of chat to you guys and talk to you about kind of my top 5 priorities, how I am thinking about it. And I encourage you guys too to grab a pen and paper. Let's sit down and just write out our top 5 priorities, and then we're going to kind of chat about what mine are, what my secondary priorities, and then we'll come back here and chat about how to get that all to work. So the art of balancing it all, for one, it is definitely an art, because as I mentioned just a second ago, it's not really about being able to balance everything of equal importance, if that makes sense. It is more of a mental thing for me. Like, my biggest struggle and my days where I'm feeling the most overwhelmed, it's because I'm mentally thinking that this thing over here deserves the same amount of attention as this over here, and then this over here deserves the same amount of attention as this and this. And that's when I enter the state of overwhelm. So it is a huge mental thing for me when it comes to balancing it all. It really is. So the first thing that I did when I first read that, again, that seasoned mama's comment of we are raising children and not houses, but, you know, how do we balance it all when it comes to homemaking and homeschooling and everything like that? The first thing I did was really just think about what my top 5 priorities are. I haven't even written them down yet because this is very new and fresh in my mind. So this video might be a little bit all over the place because it's not really that planned. So anyway, I thought I would share with you the top 5 priorities that are on my mind right now, and they might change throughout a little bit. Now my top, and the thing that I'm trying to think of here is my top 5 main priorities, and then I'm going to also do my secondary priorities as well, like what is very important, but it has to make sure I'm aligning with what my top priorities are for accomplishing, you know, whether that be the vision of your home, creating that home atmosphere, whatever that is. Another thing that is very important when it comes to writing down our priorities, that is to 100% communicate our priorities with our spouses and our children and just the people that are helping us in the day-to-day living in the life. That's really important to be able to communicate what your priorities are, because if your priorities, so for example, if mine and my husband's priorities of like as a family unit and as a family, you know, just overall as a whole big family picture is not on the same page, then there's going to be like that, you're not going to ever achieve that actual main priority, or you're not going to be able to make sure that everything else kind of goes with that, if that makes sense. So really making sure that you are talking to the people in your life about, hey, these are my main priorities, and to even mention like, I need help reaching this because I'm not going to be able to accomplish my main priority over here if I'm still having to do this over here, if that makes sense. So really communicate with what you need as far as helping you achieve those priorities, and make sure that your kids know as well, like, hey, this is our priority in our home, and if this item or if this activity is taking away from the priority of that family unity or that relationship, whatever it might be, then that will be something that you can kind of either say, well, you know, we're not getting rid of it forever, we're just going to press pause on that as we get our priorities straight again. So that is kind of what I'm thinking of right now as far as where my mind is at when it comes to priorities, is really communicating them with your children, and to really treat our children as well as part of the unit, so they know that like, hey, these are our priorities in our home. Let's all make sure we're on the same page together, so that can be on the forefront of our minds. Anyway, so the main thing I wanted to do here as far as being my main primary, 100% primary priority, and that is relationship. So I'm going to go ahead and write down relationships as being my number 1 priority, because with relationships is going to come a whole, honestly, line of everything else. Like everything's going to be flowing from relationships. So when it comes to relationships, I have my time with the Lord as being a head priority. Even if it's 5-10 minutes a day, it makes a huge difference on how my overall day kind of feels, how it flows, and everything in between when it comes to my time with the Lord. And another priority is making sure I have quality time, again, even if it's only 5-10 minutes a day, just one-on-one time with my husband, whether it be connecting, talking about our days. That is another huge priority for me as well. And then another relationship priority is, of course, one-on-one time with my kiddos. Now it can be either as a group, but I am trying so hard, and if you are a busy mama, I'm sure you know what I mean by this, but even 5-10 minutes per each child doing either one activity, one art project, whatever it may be, it can actually be a struggle when there's multiple ones of them. So that being a huge priority is that even 5-10 minute of one-on-one time, whether that be reading a story together, helping me in the kitchen together, just giving that child undivided attention. So once you've determined your number 1 priority, which for me is definitely relationships, and again, underneath relationships is God, my husband, my children, my friends and family. They're just one of the most important things, and it's something that cannot be, honestly, it cannot be measured. Like the relationships are one thing that cannot be measured. Like they really can't. And so really determining my number 1 priority is my relationships. Every single decision in our home that comes into our home, or if it's something that we have to decide on, it's going to contribute to growing relationships. And if it doesn't help relationships or grow relationships, then we'll probably say no thank you or press pause on it. So my second top priority is homemaking, and underneath this category you can have all of your secondary priorities, which we'll get to later in the video. But underneath homemaking, what I have written down is just creating that peaceful home atmosphere, so our relationships, again going back to relationships, because that being the most important, can thrive. So whether that be kind of establishing cleaning methods or things that work for your family, I go back and forth with actually implementing every single thing that the Fly Lady method has. I do love the method, but it can also be a lot for busy seasons of life. Even if that zone cleaning is 15 minutes a day, some days I don't get that 15 minutes to go do that, and that's 100% okay, because maybe the 15 minutes that I would have spent doing that, I needed to maybe start some food. Sorry, there's a little fly flying around everywhere. Maybe I needed to start dinner earlier, or maybe there's just work projects to do. So things that kind of like have to switch around as far as there being a priority. But again, it's always going back to that number one priority of a relationship. So with homemaking, I kind of tie in my Fly Lady method, my cleaning habits, and my laundry and everything underneath homemaking. My cooking and things like that all kind of wrap around the whole relationship thing. I think one of the best things our family does, and one of my favorite things our family does, is an actual family dinner where we are all sitting down together every single night, eating together, talking about our day. And that's just one of the most beautiful things that has created a very strong family tie and family unit in our home. We're sitting down, praying together, eating together, talking about our day, and it provides a beautiful kind of the end of the day for family unity. Again, going back to relationship, but it also has to do with homemaking because you're also making the food, you're including the children, you're sitting down eating together, and it all again creates that family thing. So my second priority is definitely homemaking. And again, the next priority is another level down. We'll all hopefully all help that relationship and homemaking and everything tie all together for kind of how I want our home to be and our family life to be, and that is our homeschool. And one of the things, and I've shared this in many of my homeschooling videos in the past, is I really, again, will go back to priority number one with it being relationship focused. Anything that takes away from that, I can't do, because I know that is my main priority in my home and in my personal life, and it creates so much peace when relationships are sound and beautiful. And so for homeschool, that's the same thing. I can't have anything in our home, whether that be curriculum, extracurriculars, or anything like that, that is going to take away that peace in our home. What you doing, Millie? So that's why I choose open and go curriculum right now in the little years, just because it works best for our family to not have the extracurriculars. Because if I, for example, if I am trying to do hands-on activities for two little ones at a time, and my toddler needs hands-on activities, and my baby needs mommy at the same time, I will be such a frazzled, stressed out mess that it will completely take away everything that I want our homeschool to be when it comes to creating that peaceful atmosphere. It just will. I can't do the extremely hands-on curriculums and things like that. I just can't. My relationship with my little ones is a priority, not necessarily the curriculum and all the fun things, you know. And I mentioned before in a lot of my videos, I wish I could be that mom that did all the fun arts and crafts every single day. I just can't right now, and that's perfectly fine. So the next thing I have as a priority is my personal and then work type things, as far as it being one of the main goals. Again, I want to make sure that this kind of goes all the way up to the top as far as helping me establish everything relationship-wise, homemaking, and everything like that. So this is my fourth priority, so it's not number one, but it is my personal, like, work type goals. And underneath my personal one here, now a lot of my personal goals that I have written down here, they all kind of stem back to the same thing. My personal goals is relationship. A lot of my personal goals is, you know, being that grace-filled mama when I am teaching my kids. A lot of my personal goals has to do with like making the foods from scratch, learning how to make them even better, learning and experimenting with foods and different things like that. So that is all of my personal kind of like goals too. And then a lot of my other personal goals having to do with like work projects, helping my husband with work projects, you know, getting projects off the ground, so to speak, and things like that. And so a lot of those have to do with my personal goals. This is something too that kind of just, oh, what's the matter? Want me to open that? And this is something too that I'm going to mention, and this is probably going to be very controversial, not meant to be, but I know it can be, and especially the online community space. And when it comes to a personal mama's goals, see, I don't know how to talk about this really because it's controversial, and it's something that's kind of just like on the forefront of my mind. And again, I'm not really sure. Hey, I'm not really sure if I'm going to leave this part of the video in, and that is that there are going to be seasons of life, and life especially as mamas, homeschooling mamas, homemakers, that we are really going to have to be 100% selfless. It doesn't mean that we have to completely lose ourselves, but it might require losing ourselves for a time and a moment. And when we lose ourselves, whether that be to homeschooling or to motherhood or anything else that might be, that's okay, because it's only a season. And I believe that, you know, through all the seasons, it's, you know, the whole thing about balancing it all, right? If I tried to give myself the same amount of care as I gave everyone else, it just wouldn't work, and I would end up being bitter, and I would be like this more selfish mindset, right? If I am on the mindset and I accept that, you know, there are seasons of life where I'm going to have to be selfless. It is not about mama and mama self-care, although that's important. Don't get me wrong, it's very important. Again, I'm not sure if I'm gonna leave this in the video or not. But there's gonna be seasons of life that it's gonna require us to be selfless, and we will lose ourselves sometimes in motherhood and within homeschooling and motherhood and everything like that. And something that I'm kind of thinking of too is like, yes, we can take care of ourselves. I can go out and go thrifting by myself for a few hours here and there, and that's great, and that's always so much fun, and I can meet a friend for coffee, and that's always so incredible, and I can get in worship and feel so renewed and everything like that. But we can also still lose ourselves a little bit, and I think that's okay. I think a lot of the times in the modern culture and the non-biblical society, I should say, is that's the idea that we shouldn't lose ourselves, that we should always be who we are, and we should be like everything like that. I don't know. My mind is just in this spot right now where I'm like, you know what? It's okay to lose yourselves a little bit. It's okay to have a season of life of not balancing every single thing to the point where, no, of course we need to take care of ourselves, but you know, some seasons might require us to lay ourselves down for a little bit, and that's okay. And that also goes around in a circle of like, we're not called to be martyrs either. So again, it's about the balancing, and I don't know. I don't know if that made any sense at all. That's just something that's been on my heart for a while, as far as just the whole idea of this video, which is balancing everything. Anyway, that huge rabbit trail to say is for my own personal goals. A lot of my own personal goals, to be completely transparent and honest, have to do with, you know, homeschooling and, you know, raising my children and everything like that. As far as, yes, I do have to balance my own self-care, making sure that I am emotionally available and ready to take care of my children, and emotionally readily available just to serve in so many areas of life. And a lot of that does require stepping away, refueling, all of those things. But anyway, that's just where my mind is at when it comes to my own personal thing. Is my personal goals really do all kind of tie together with the family. The next thing I wanted to mention, or something else that I wanted to mention along the lines of priorities and things like that, and that is that I can have all the priorities written down, I can have all my goals written down, I can have my secondary goals written down, everything like that. I can have like a master list, and after this video I'm probably going to go to Canva and type out all my goals like I normally do and create a pretty template and put it on my fridge to remind me, knowing myself. But I can have all of that in place, and I can have every intention of making sure I get my priorities straight, but there's still going to be days where you're going to be juggled. It's going to be a big juggle. And what that looks like for me when it comes to juggling and getting it all done is some days, especially if my kiddos are sick, my main priority, of course, is going to be them. It's not going to be cleaning the house or doing laundry or homeschooling. That's going to be the priority. If on the day my kiddos are feeling great and the house is clean, laundry's cut up, then I'm probably going to be focusing on making muffins and bread, getting it in the fridge, getting them in the freezer so we have them throughout the week, because that's what the day allows. Every day is going to have a little bit of a different priority, and that's the beauty, honestly, of, for one, homeschooling, being at home with my kiddos more, and just really focusing on them and the relationship. And there's also going to be days where nothing gets done because maybe we went out to a park and we spent the day at a creek and we spent the day at the river, whatever the case might be, and nothing got done, and that's okay too, because the priority was the little ones and connecting with them and building those core memories, and building those core memories with them. So really, the whole video is supposed to be about balancing it all, but it's really sharing that we can have all kinds of different priorities, but we're not meant to balance it all, is what I'm saying. We're not designed to be able to perfectly balance everything. Honestly, my husband and I talk about this a lot too when it comes to our own personal relationship, and that is, even you hear so many, you know, marriage podcasts, marriage advice, everything, and they'll say everything, you know, divide everything 50-50, everything needs to be balanced, all the chore charts need to be equal, everything needs to be like the same. And my husband and I have talked about this a lot over the years. We'll be married 11 years in a couple of months here. Yeah, we'll be celebrating 11 years, which is crazy. But something that we've learned along the way is that marriage is not 50-50. Sometimes it requires 80-20. Sometimes it requires 90-10. Sometimes it requires 40-60. It's never, ever has it ever been once 50-50 in our home. It just never has, because one of us has a goal that we're working on and the other one is there to help us achieve the goal, because we are teammates, we're partners together in life. And so when one of us has a goal or priority, the other one's going to step up and do that 80-90% while the other one accomplishes the goal. Then we switch off and help each other, because you're helping each other accomplish that goal. The same thing goes with our priorities. All these priorities are really helping us reach that one goal and really help us get to that focal point of relationships. And so him and I talk about that a lot because right now we are in a very, very busy season. We're working on a really big project outside of the home right now. So he's gone pretty much 6.5 days a week. So I'm, at home most of the time. And if I had the attitude or the mentality of this is not 50-50, this is not fair, but then he's doing the main project and it's like, well, I'm doing like this much and you're doing this much, then it just becomes this like battle of who's doing the most. So if we constantly have the attitude of 50-50 or everything has to be balanced, then we'll all be miserable. And then the relationships at the end of the day will suffer. But if we are there for each other as a family unit, we're of course making that top priority be the priority. I think it really, really helps achieve that family unity, which is the whole picture of what we wanted to have all together to begin with. I don't know if that makes sense, but we've talked about that a lot as far as marriage advice being wrong when people tell you that it's 50-50 because it's not. And the same thing goes with people saying how to balance everything and how to balance it all. You can't. And everything's not meant to be of the same equal importance because my house cleaning, and I'm going to be honest, my laundry, homemaking, cleaning, vacuuming doesn't hold even a small remote of importance as my children. And some days I get them mixed up. I'm going to be also honest and say that some days I get my priorities mixed up hugely because I will have a spotless house, but my children are definitely wanting some mommy one-on-one time. So there are some days and honestly some weeks that I can tell like, what, this is not a priority. I have my priorities wrong. Lord, help me to get my priorities straight. But it's also not necessarily, Lord, help me get my priorities straight. It's, Lord, help me to want a different priority, because sometimes we can be really overtaken. And again, it goes back to that comment that really wanted me to talk about this of we are raising children and not houses, is it really makes you think of like, the core memories of my children. And yes, I do like a tidy home, and yes, I like providing that for my children because they also see the value in it. But I also want to like spend that quality time with them, and it's a balance. And some days I don't get that balance right, but again, we're not meant to balance it right. But really having that tight priority of relationships being the most important. So something that I've been learning recently is before I do any like house projects apart from cooking and cleaning up the kitchen, that being my number one thing as far as house projects. Before I fold laundry or do anything like that, it's, am I sitting down reading the book with them? Am I offering to play a game with them? Am I including them in my work as well? That's a big one. Is yes, it might take me longer to cook dinner or to fold laundry, but am I including them in my life as well? Is a huge one as far as making sure that relationship is number one priority for that. Anyway, all that to say is we're not meant to balance it all. I don't balance it all at all. Some days are crazy when it comes to that. And again, I enter the state of overwhelm when I'm trying to balance it all, when I'm trying to put the equal points or whatever you want to call it into everything. A couple of other things I wanted to mention as well when it comes to balancing it all, or I should say the lack of balancing. I think my mentality is now not necessarily about balancing it all. It's again choosing that priority for the day, whatever that might be. And again, that's a mental thing as well, because it's really hard for me personally, in my personality, it is extremely difficult for me to have my top priority say, okay, so this day of the week is going to be, my main priority is going to be playing games with the kids. We are going to do an art craft day and things like that. And it's really hard for me to mentally put aside the pile of laundry over here, to put aside the pile of dishes, even though I know 100% of the time I will get to that later in the day. But I also have a hard time, and my personality, hi honey, has a hard time of saying, you know what, I want to do that first. That way I don't have to think of, I don't know if anyone else is like that. It's really hard for me to relax and to really be present and still when there's like the to-do list lingering over here. I hope I'm not the only one. Hello. I hope I'm not the only one like that, but it's so difficult for me to rest and to relax and just chill when there's like laundry to be folded and put away. Anyway, that's a whole nother video when it comes to that. That's why I said balancing it all is a mental thing for me and not necessarily doing the thing. Because I have the time of the day to accomplish the thing, I just get my priorities mixed up as far as what is most important. So let's say my main priority is like meal prep, getting meals in the freezer. Well, that day my laundry might pile up a little bit, or something like this might pile up a little bit. But my main priority, I want to make sure that gets done first. Just like I mentioned earlier, my main priority, spending time with the kids one-on-one, I want to get that done first. Then everything else will kind of flow into the day. And that's just kind of what works for me when it comes to the practical side of things, is I have to have the main list of priorities always at the forefront of my mind when it comes to planning my days. And I used to be against planning my day to day. I used to just want to do reverse planning. Now, academically, when it comes to our homeschool, reverse planning 100%. I only do reverse planning. When it comes to planning my days, I only plan the day before. That's it. I don't do advanced planning apart from the night before, but the night before, I have to know what's going on the next day because that really sets off our tone for the following day. If I do not have a plan as far as what my priority is for the day, what my secondary priority is for the day, then I won't know what to do first. And then that is again when I enter into that state of overwhelm because my priorities are all mixed up. And it's also really hard for me, and I want to say, and it's funny because I used to pride myself greatly in multitasking. I consider myself to be a very, very good multitasker. However, I also know that when you multitask a lot of things at once, like 3 or 4 things at once, you can't do all 4 of them incredibly well. And so learning how to me, again, mentally say, okay, let's just do 1 or 2 things. Like I can typically do 2 things really well at the same time, but 3 or 4, I'm just doing it very half-heartedly at this point if I'm doing it that way. But really learning to, again, prioritize what I'm trying to get done for the day and really my secondary priorities as well. It really isn't about doing everything every single day. It's about picking and choosing what you want that priority to be. I hope that made sense to you. This is something that, again, I've just been thinking through, and honestly something that I've been really struggling with as far as juggling it all and not wanting to do everything every single day, because I do want to do everything every single day, and that can be a challenge as well. The last thing I'm going to mention, and that is the last thing I typically do like to do, and this again ties back to my mentality of this being a mental thing and not a physical getting it done type thing. I have to have a to-do list. I have got to write everything down that I am thinking of when I am thinking of it. And I will have like either a pad of paper out in the fridge. Sometimes I'll have something somewhere else. But if I do not, one second here. But if I do not have a paper of things to do, and honestly, in the priority of when they need to get done, my mind will be a jumbled mess because I'm going to, again, try to hold everything to be equal importance. I was talking to my husband about this the other day. He came home and I was like, I was honest, I was like, I've been really struggling today because I have this project. I need this to get done. I'm researching this. I gotta get this done. Like we start school next week and I can't do it because of this and like all these things. And I told him, I was like, I don't know what to do first. And I got to the point in my afternoon where I had no idea what to do. Thank you. There you go. I had no idea what to do, so I didn't do any of it because it's like, well, they're all important. And so I sat down and started to do one of the projects. And I was like, no, I need to do this because this is more important. So I'd start to do that. Actually, I need to be over here because this needs to be done first. And so I gotta have a to-do list. That's just something that I work well from. And again, putting that to-do list in the order of importance has also helped as well as far as keeping my priorities straight, because honestly, without the to-do list as well, it makes my heart wander off to things that are not a priority and things that I'm trying to either accomplish or goals I'm trying to achieve. It can really sneak in there and try to disguise itself as a priority. And it can really take your joy away from what the true priorities are. And what happens with me is I will have everything in my mind saying, okay, I can't forget that I gotta do that. A couple of minutes later, oh, I also can't forget I have to do that. And so I just need to write it all down. That way it's out of my brain and out of my like headspace. That way I'm not constantly thinking, oh, remember that, oh, remember that, remember that. And so I just need to write it all down. That way it's out of my head. Kind of like brain dumping, I guess, because I'm sure everyone's heard of brain dumping the night before, because it takes up so much brain power to constantly be thinking about. And if you are a mama who also homeschools, and if you have work projects on the side and anything else, it's a lot. And then when it all flows together, it's just like there's no brain power left over at the end of the day. Anyway, those are just some things that have been on my heart and on my mind as far as balancing it all. This is something, again, an area of life that I just really struggle in, and I'm trying to get better at doing this. So I thought I would share those things with you guys if anyone else is also struggling with just balancing it all, or really how to change their mentality of balancing it all. Because yeah, sometimes things can't be balanced all the time, and that's okay, right? Well guys, I'm gonna go ahead and end the video here. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a little bit all over the place and rambly and yeah, mixed up a lot, but I hope you guys enjoyed hearing kind of what's been on my mind and heart lately when it comes to balancing all of the things. I hope you guys have a blessed day, whatever you're doing, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.